Yoga.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing great today, too. Thanks for asking. And we'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the 3 stages of growth mortal mind must pass through before reason walks through the open door of revelation. Listen as we explore the Christian Sacraments of Baptism, Holy Communion, Confirmation, Matrimony, and Holy Orders as stepping stones to higher consciousness. In this podcast, we will synthesize Kriya Yoga with some Christian sacraments of Christian Science and the Infinite Way. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and grow up. Swami, the title of today's podcast is Beyond Appearances and Thoughts is Truth. Well, let's get started and have you just explain to us what exactly is beyond the appearances and thoughts.
Well, beyond appearances and thoughts is truth, which is the divine creation. The reason we would want to be spiritual is because spirit is a demonstrable principle, which testifies with deeds, not words. Internal understanding of the divine principle transforms external circumstances. So I think today what we'll talk about is how do we do this? Let's look at John 3:5-6, and I'll read it. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of spirit is spirit. End of quote. I like the use of the term man by Jesus because it implies growth before the rebirth. We can also look at what Mrs. Eddy wrote in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, page 383, 3-20, and I'll read it. We need a clean body and a clean mind, a body rendered pure by mind as well as washed by water. One says, I take good care of my body. To do this, the pure and exalting influence of the divine mind on the body is requisite. And the Christian Scientist takes the best care of his body when he leaves it most out of his thought. And like the Apostle Paul, is willing rather to be absent from the body and be present with the Lord. End of quote. So how do we go from being person on earth to the divine child and being born again? These 3 modes of growth mortal mind must go through. The stages in development. In earlier times when they had points of passage and rites of passage, and today we have none of this without initiating our hidden potential. So we're chronologically aging and psychologically, spiritually remaining in this underdeveloped state. And because of our lack of leadership in how to unlock this hidden potential, we chronologically age and psychologically, spiritually remain in the belief we are a finite mortal being. And so beyond appearances and thoughts is something better.
It kind of leads me to my first question for you, Swami. In Mary Baker Eddy's quote, you said, a body rendered pure by mind, and that's with a capital M, as well as washed by water. And we know that Mary Baker Eddy, when she capitalizes mind, she actually means God. So could you maybe tell us, how should we go about a body rendered pure by mind? What does she mean by that? What would be the process for us to do that?
Well, for me, I would have to look back at the Christian Sacraments. There seems to be a sequence: the baptism, then the Holy Communion, followed by confirmation, matrimony, and finally Holy Orders. Like Mary Baker Eddy says, you need a clean body and a clean mind. In order for us to be born again of spirit, we have to refine the mind-body complex, distill, purify, and perfect ourselves physically and mentally in order to create a hospitable environment to invite the perfection of being into our consciousness. Way more than just declaring, I'm spiritual. What we talk about here is the physics of spirituality. When mind and body come together with the omnipresent perfection of being, there are changes we can expect, what Mary Baker Eddy called the chemicalization, the changes that occur when identity shifts from a mental material basis to a spiritual basis.
I'm going to continue with the rest of that passage that we have from Mary Baker Eddy. A hint may be taken from the emigrant, whose filth does not affect his happiness, because mind and body rest on the same basis. To the mind, equally gross, dirt gives no uneasiness. It is the native element of such a mind which is symbolized and not shaped by its surroundings, but impurity and uncleanliness, which do not trouble the gross, could not be borne by the refined. This shows that the mind must be clean to keep the body in proper condition. End of the quote. Swami, would you like to add to what she's saying here?
Well, I think the important thing we have to understand is what she said prior to this. A body rendered pure by mind, as well as washed by water. The difference here between thinking with our five corporeal senses and a body rendered pure by divine mind is the difference between mental material energy and spiritual truth, between thinking in duality and knowing in the unified field, in the truth of being. What she also said, to do this, the pure and exalting influence of the divine mind on the body is requisite. We have to learn how to stop thinking with five corporeal senses and begin knowing with seven spiritual senses. And this is a prerequisite to being born again of spirit. There's a lot that has to be in place before we can learn how to control how we think and then eventually stop thinking. This is where I really like the Kriya Yoga, where you have things like pranayama, which means control of prana. Prana is the life force. It's being able to do this because the connection is found between the thought unity between the divine mind and the real man, which is the Christ. And so again, if we don't have the strategies required for us to be able to invite divine mind into our awareness, your chances of doing this are diminished enormously.
Swami, could you let us know what maybe some of those strategies might be?
Start here with something from Joel Goldsmith, Beyond Words and Thoughts, Chapter 4. The heading is The Middle Path.
And I'll read it. The fleshly sense of man cannot enter the kingdom of heaven, spirit. The healthy fleshly sense is as illusory as the sickly sense, and the sense of good man is as illusory as the sense of bad man. The middle path, or spiritual consciousness, does not engage in exchanging the sense of erroneous man for the sense of correct man, but knows only spiritual man, or the Son of God. In healing work, as understood in the infinite way, we are unseeing and unknowing the corporeal or physical sense of man, well or sick, rich or poor, good or bad. We are not unseeing or unknowing a corporeal man or a physical man, for there is none. But we are unknowing or unseeing the corporeal or physical sense of man. The corporeal sense is the tempter. The healing truth is our consciousness of incorporeal man and the universe. Melchizedek, or the Christ, who was never born and will never die, is the true man. And that which we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell is our false sense of that man. There is not a false man, a fallen man, or a physical man, but there is a false sense of man which we entertain. End of this passage. Swami, your insights here.
Well, I really like the idea of the middle path, because in Kriya Yoga, we represent the middle path with what's called Shushumna Nadi. And the way to get to it is by balancing Ida Nadi with Pingala Nadi. So you've got what we call descending prana and ascending prana. Descending prana would be represented by appearances, things visible and tangible. And ascending prana would be thoughts, invisible but tangible. Once we master the mind-body complex, that creates the opportunity for us to open the pathway to what's called the middle road, Shushumna, which is access into spiritual sense. And I would say in Kriya Yoga, your first order of business is skillful use of thought. Understanding there are 3 modes of mortal thought, where we're thinking in terms of duality. Your lower mind, the first stage in development, which we overcome fear, instinct, appetite, preservation, survival. And we do that by rebirthing the body in spirit, so that we're not just managing fear, but we are knowing ourselves in a way that there is no vulnerability. The next octave would be the mid-mind, which is human intelligence. We have to graduate from being reactive, emotional, to being able to process information using mental functions, perception, reason, memory, intuition. The final stage is overcoming world mind, the son of perdition, which is corporeal sense in human consciousness. And then being governed by self-control and self-mastery is when we learn how to stop thinking with 5 corporeal senses and make our mind an avenue of awareness for the operations of divine mind. Because we have refined ourselves physically and mentally, operating at an acute sense of awareness, we have attention for what's invisible and intangible. And then in that silence and stillness, we let divine mind do its knowing in our awareness. This is what I would say Mary Baker Eddy is talking about, a body rendered pure by the operations of divine mind, which, as you can see, there's a lot that has to be in place before you're actually doing this.
We're going to pause right here to hear a word from our sponsor. Listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Yoga Asana class is a module fitting into the master plan, leading the practitioner to the experience of total consciousness by attuning the mind-body complex to the divine idea. A system of exercises designed to use the physical appearance to determine individual level of consciousness and degree of awareness, starting with the process of lengthening and strengthening muscles to bring bones into the position of internal support. We educate thought up to spiritual apprehension, because when spirit is cause, it calls into expression the beauty of holiness, making creation perfect. Mountain pose may not bring you truth in consciousness, but truth in consciousness must bring mountain pose. Visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. We have a soundbite here from Herb Fitch from Realization of Oneness, Class 34A.
And if anybody is interested in the full audio file or the complete program, you can get this at mysticalprinciples.com, and I'll play it.
In our meditation now, let us hold to this truth of the invisible nature of your being, that you can never be two. And when you're not being the Son of God, you're not being yourself. The Son of God is never visible. The Son of God is never corporeal, never in a physical form, never in the world. Always in the kingdom of God, where earth appears to be, always in the body of light, where physical form appears to be. And because your five senses cannot cognize that fact, you must transcend the five senses, accepting the word of the Christ, which says it is so. And so you're living beyond the capacity of your senses in your acceptance. You're not limiting your universe to what your senses or your brain can tell you. You're accepting with trust the words of the Christ that you are that invisible Son now. As the disciples were told, that they were not of the world, that they were to be sanctified, that they were divine, that they were like Jesus Christ, the Son of God, that God was truly their Father, just as God was His Father, and that we now accept our perfection as the sons of God. Be perfect as your Father. Your Father's perfection lies in the fact that there is no power other than the power of God. Your perfection lies in the fact that the power of God is the power of the Son, and beside the power of your sonship there is no other power. Beside the mind of your sonship there is no other mind. And that mind being perfect and all-intelligent, all action of that mind is equally perfect and all-intelligent. And all action that is not perfect and all-intelligent is as much an illusion as the evils that you see around you. All that is not perfect as your Father is the illusion of the senses. There is nothing but perfection present in the invisible kingdom of God, and the visible world is but a distorted mental image of that invisible, ever-present perfection. The perfection never goes away. The spiritual reality never disappears. The sonship never changes. It's a matter of getting accustomed to living as that invisible Son in that invisible perfection and looking out at the world with no fear or doubt or need to change what appears, knowing that your substance, realized, makes all the necessary adjustments. Your substance, realized, is the invisible miracle worker of grace. It's only when you realize your identity as divine Son, divine life, divine substance, divine being, that the adjustments are made. They cannot be made except through your conscious awareness of your identity. But when you are in that conscious awareness, without sword, without might, without power, without manipulation, your very own being removes the distorted sense appearances and reveals the harmony of your being. It is effortless. The only effort is in being yourself.
Yeah, I like where he said, and all action that is not perfect and all intelligent is as much an illusion as the evils that you see around you. End of quote. Maya, or illusion, or ignorance, is the necessary veil or reflection that allows consciousness to experience itself through limitation by manifestation. The Creator leaving itself only to return to itself, which is the cosmic dance of Maya and Leela. Illusion isn't the enemy when it becomes the monitor through which consciousness is perceived. We can use the testimony of our senses, the appearances, and our thoughts to help us understand what are we conscious of. Consciousness is experience. The goal here is to become conscious of the force within that eliminates death, the miracle awaiting realization. And to help keep us on course, we have what's called karma, the law of karma. which is the operative law only when consciousness is separated from the true self. Karmic law in this model is the love of God, not letting anything accept the false sense of identity for the truth.
We have something here from Joel Goldsmith's Beyond Words and Thoughts, Chapter 4. It's under the heading Ascension. Now read it. On the spiritual path, we begin our journey by studying the truth, learning and practicing the truth. We never attain the goal of realization, however, until we reach beyond the mind and its knowing of the truth to our becoming truth. End of his quote. Swami, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, the idea of becoming one with the divine principle, which is spiritual identity. Spirit is one and can't be divided. Move beyond appearances and thoughts, or as Joel Goldsmith says, words and thoughts, which are duality. Spirit is the unified state. Everything is happening at once. There's no time, no space. And we can't perceive this with the mind we're using to get us through this lifetime. So think differently. To do that, mortal mind must go through 3 stages of growth. And then there are all of these things we can be doing, like being born again of spirit, learning how to control our behavior and our appearance and make intelligent decisions. All part of how it fits into this master plan. Like we're learning, in the final analysis, we find out the truth is I am the same I am as I started out, but no longer being fooled by the temporary sense of life that has needs and problems.
We have next, again, from Beyond Word and Thoughts, from Joel S. Goldsmith. The next heading is called Transfiguration, and I'm going to read it. Jesus ascended out of corporeal form. He was translated. This can be interpreted to mean that he rose beyond the mind. He rose above his own mind because it is only in the mind that the corporeal sense can be entertained, not in the spiritual faculties. In our soul faculties, we are spirit. We see each other spiritually, whether we are here on this plane or whether we are looking at those who have gone to another plane or to those who are not yet born. End of the passage here. Swami, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, for me, the real benefit is found in the symbolism of the Transfiguration, where we're told how to activate spiritual sense. The symbolism of Jesus taking James, Peter, and John to the mountaintop, where Moses and Elijah appear, is the way for us to graduate from thinking at your lowest level of consciousness at Muladhara chakra to rising up to Ajna chakra and then eventually to Sahasrara chakra. But a lot of it has to do with our understanding of the process. What are the things that I need to do to graduate from sense to soul? Is more of a stage in development than a story of a God-born man.
Swami, you said earlier in the podcast, Kriya Yoga represents the middle path with Sushumna, and the way to get to it is by balancing Ida and Pingala. Can you talk more about that? What does that look like when we're doing it, and how do we do it?
Well, like we had said, descending prana, Ida Nadai, where prana enters the feminine terminal of the third eye center and then touches upon the feminine terminal of your lower 5 energy centers. So it goes from Cancer to Virgo to Taurus to Scorpio to Pisces to Capricorn. At Capricorn is where it just switches over to Aquarius. And now it's on the masculine side and it's ascending prana. It starts to rise, touches upon the masculine terminal of the next 5 energy centers. Go from Aquarius to Sagittarius to Aries to Libra to Gemini, and then it would exit at Leo. descending prana represents the appearances, anything visible and tangible. And ascending prana represents thoughts. And Shushumna, the middle road, is the absolute, or the realm of wholeness, no separation. Spirit is everywhere, always. But in order for us to be able to call spirit into expression, we have to know ourselves in the way that we're known, which means we have to put off the mental material concept, the false sense of self, in order to be receptive to the deeper things of this divine principle. And you don't just kill the body has a purpose. We're using it. And we use the testimony of our senses to help us understand what we're conscious of. Consciousness is experience, and conscious awareness of divine truth resolves things into thoughts and exchanges the objects of sense for the divine idea. It is the miracle awaiting realization. And as long as we understand the difference between realizing truth and thinking about it, it's why Joel Goldsmith says we move above knowing truth to being truth. And in being truth, we must be one with the divine creation. And this is why in Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy insists on the principle and the rule. The principle being the absolute goodness and allness of the omnipresent perfection of being, and the rule is oneness. And why in the Bible it says, ask in my name. My name means my likeness. So as long as we are doing things with human will and personal sense, we're under karmic law. And we are driven by a belief in two powers, but we're not able to access the benefits that come with realization of divine law.
Swami, one last curiosity I have. When we were talking about Maya and illusion, you had said the Creator leaving itself only to return to itself. And then you said it represents like the cosmic dance of Maya and Leela. Can you just maybe give us a little bit more information about that?
Well, you have to realize the only life that's here is divine life. It's the life of God. And the idea of the hero's journey is the separation, the journey, and the return. So the separation is represented by the principle of manifestation, that God becomes all of creation, becomes you, me, all the events, circumstances, and situations of the universe simply for its own amusement. And as long as we are under the hypnosis or the illusion that we're separate entities, then we dance to the drama of this vulnerable, temporary sense of life. But once we pierce through the veil or live above the limitations of that veil, we know the truth. The only thing that's here is the perfection of being, the divine creation, held, controlled, and governed by the divine law of absolute goodness, without beginning or end. And so this is why when we finally realize the truth, we don't try anymore. We rest in the knowledge.
Swami, thank you for your insights for today's episode. Beyond appearances and thoughts is truth. Listeners, be sure to visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. On any of those pages, you can scroll down and you'll see several buttons that you could press that would further your understanding. Swami, any final thoughts about today's podcast?
Well, I would like to encourage people to join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and grow up. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga realization. Namaste.